Real horrors.
On the coast, they scare you with ghosts. In the jungle, with water demons. But in the highlands of Peru, fear has a very different name. It is not a transparent specter. It does not pass through walls. It walks like you. It breathes like you. And if you are not careful, it slips past you without making a sound. They call it the Pishtaco, and its work is simple. Find people alone on the roads, slit their throats, hang them like meat, and drain the fat from their bodies until nothing is left but skin and bone. They say its figure can still be seen when night falls in the highest ravines of the Andes. They say it smells like burnt fat and cold metal. They say people disappear, and later they find only a thin, empty body with not a drop of fat left under the skin. This is the story of one of them. The story of the night. An entire village understood that the Pishtaco was not just a legend. High in the mountains of Ayacucho, pressed against a deep ravine, there was a village that did not appear on any map. Adobe houses, clay tile roofs, smoke rising from the stoves. Life was simple. Plant, harvest, tend the livestock. But the village had a scar, a long, narrow ravine that cut the mountain in two like a black wound. They called it the Ravine of the Lamb because years earlier someone had found remains there, not of a lamb, a people. At that time of year, the cold got into your bones. The wind came whistling down between the rocks, and when darkness fell, nobody stayed outside. The elders gathered around the fire to tell stories, and one was repeated more than all the others. "Do not come back alone through the ravine," they said. "That is where the man who leaves you dry as a drumskin walks, the one who steals the fat." The children laughed. The young people, as always, did not believe, but the elders did not tell the story for fun. They had seen bodies. One afternoon, a man arrived in the village, light-skinned, taller than everyone, with a thick beard, pale eyes, and a hat that covered half his face. He carried a sack over his shoulder and an old metal case that made a sound like metal when he set it on the ground. He said he was an engineer, that he had come from the city to survey land for a future road. They gave him a room in the community hall because in that village strangers are taken care of. But nobody slept easy that night. The women said the man barely ate, just a little bread and some broth. And yet his eyes always looked hungry, a strange hunger fixed on other people's bodies, not on his plate. The next day, the disappearances began. First, it was a drunk man who never came back from the cantina. The last anyone heard from him was that he said, "I am going through the ravine. It is faster." Nobody saw him arrive home. Then it was a shepherd, a 17-year-old boy who went up to the hills with his sheep and did not come back. The sheep came back. He did not. In both cases, the stranger was not in the village when the absences were noticed. He had gone out to walk and study the land. The murmurs started. The elders gathered the young people at night and told them, "This is not a coincidence. This is a Pishtaco. And the Pishtaco always arrives dressed as someone important, an engineer, a priest, a landowner. Our main character is Julián, 22 years old, a shepherd, son of farmers, used to the cold and the loneliness of the hills. One morning, the community sends him with 2 other men to look for traces of the missing. They have to walk the ravine of the Lamb. The ravine is a cut of gray and black rock with walls that close in over the path. The sun barely enters, only a thread of light that falls from above, making the stones shine like polished bone. They walk in single file. Nobody talks much. The wind inside sounds different, as if it is whistling words in Quechua that nobody wants to understand. Suddenly, one of the men stops. "Do you feel that?" Julián asks. He smells something, a heavy, thick smell, like frying meat, but old and rancid, old fat. They take a few more steps. They see it at the side of the path, between two rocks, something hanging. At first it looks like animal hides draped over metal hooks, but it is not hide. It is human skin, just skin, like an empty suit with no fat underneath, pressed against a bone. The body, or what remains of it, is hanging by the ankles from a hook driven into the rock. It has no eyes, almost no flesh. The abdomen is open from side to side, as if someone had passed an extremely sharp knife through it. On the ground, directly below, there is an old sticky puddle of something that was blood and, above all, melted fat, like the layer left when oil cools in a pot. One of the men vomits. The other begins to pray in Quechua with a broken voice. Julián stands frozen. They do not cry. They do not scream. They simply understand one thing. No animal did this. This is clean, orderly work, the work of someone who knows exactly where to cut. A Pishtaco. The entire village gathers to talk. The news spreads like wind. The elders confirm what they already knew. That dead man is empty. They did not steal his clothes or his money, only his fat. Someone mentions the stranger who was never in the village when the absences were noticed, who always carries a sack whose metal case sounds like knives. The mayor says there is no proof, that they cannot accuse a professional like that without evidence. The priest also defends him, speaking of charity and hospitality. But the fear has already taken root. Julián, who saw the hanging body, cannot sleep. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees the empty skin moving in the wind as if it were still breathing. He begins to watch the stranger. He follows him with his eyes in the square. He notices his hands, long fingers, nails always clean, like someone who washes too much. That unsettles him more than dirt would. One night he sees something. The stranger leaves the community hall very late, when everyone is asleep. He does not take his metal case. Just the sack over his shoulder, he walks toward the edge of the village, toward the ravine. Julián feels his heart in his throat. He knows he should not go alone. Everyone says, do not walk alone at night in the Andes. But he also knows that if he does not follow, they will never know the truth. He grabs a blanket, throws it over his shoulders like a poncho, and follows at a distance. The moon is almost full, but clouds cover it in intervals. The path to the ravine narrows. The shadows stretch long. The air is so cold it hurts to breathe. Julián follows the stranger always several meters behind, taking advantage of the wind-carrying sound in the other direction. The man walks calmly, like someone who already knows the path. He enters the ravine, and the darkness thickens. Inside, the wind changes tone. It no longer whistles. It moans. The rocks echo every footstep. Suddenly, Julián hears something else. Metal. The clear sound of a blade leaving its sheath. He presses himself against the rock wall, barely breathing. He sees the stranger's silhouette stop at a bend in the path. He sets the sack on the ground. He takes out something that glints in the dim light. A long, thin knife, like a butcher's knife. Julián realizes something horrible. There is nobody else on the path. And yet the stranger waits, like someone who knows his prey is about to arrive. It does not take long. In the distance, a cheerful whistle is heard, a drunk man singing. Someone is coming from another village without knowing what is waiting for them. A merchant who did not want to sleep on the road, hurrying to get home. He is humming to himself, half stumbling, not imagining that two eyes are watching him from the shadow. The stranger puts the knife away for a moment, walks toward him with a friendly step, greets him, says a few words that Julián cannot make out. They laugh, they share a drink, and when the merchant turns his back to keep walking, the stranger moves fast and silent. He covers the merchant's mouth with one hand, and with the other draws the knife across his throat in a single movement, precise, deep. The air fills with a muffled sound, like someone trying to scream underwater. The blood pours out in waves, hot and black in the darkness, staining the rocks. Julián feels sick. He wants to run, but he cannot. He is pressed against the rock, frozen by terror. The merchant's body shakes, convulses, and then goes still. The stranger holds it for a moment, as if evaluating its weight. Then, with a force that does not seem human, he drags it across the ground, leaving a dark trail behind. He takes it away from the path toward a dark hollow in the rock that Julián had not noticed before. A cave entrance. The stranger disappears inside with the body. Julián stands alone, breathing as if he had run for kilometers. He should go back, warn the others, run to the village. But something stronger than fear takes over. He needs to see. He needs to know what happens inside. With shaking legs, he moves step by step toward a cave entrance. Inside, the air changes. It is warm, heavy. It smells like smoke, metal, and burned fat. Julián hides behind a rock. He peers around just enough to see with one eye. What he sees, he will never forget. The cave is larger than it looked from outside. In the center, there is a makeshift fire pit of stones, and over it, an enormous metal pot where something boils slowly. Above the pot, hanging from hooks driven into the ceiling of the cave, there are bodies, several hanging upside down, some already almost without flesh, just skin pressed to bone, others fresher, with open wounds, split abdomens, ribs exposed. The fat melting off them falls in yellowish threads into the pot, mixing with coagulated blood. The stranger, now without his poncho, works calmly. He has the merchant's body on a makeshift wooden table, naked, face up. With the knife, he opens the abdomen from the sternum to the pelvis with a disgustingly professional precision. Julián hears the wet sound of skin separating, the soft crunch of flesh being cut, the splashing of fat falling into a container. The stranger removes pieces of tissue, cuts them, stacks them on a tray. He's not interested in the heart or the organs, only the layers of fat. After a while, he laughs to himself. He speaks in a low voice, as if talking to someone Julián cannot see. In a corner, he sees the metal case open. Inside, there are glass jars filled with solidified yellow fat, some with labels in another language. Julián finally understands the full scale of the horror. This man does not kill out of hunger. He kills for business, on commission. Someone far away in cities he has never heard of, pays for every jar of human fat that leaves that cave. Without meaning to, he takes a small step backward. A stone shifts and makes a noise. The stranger stops. He raises his head and looks toward the darkness. For a moment it seems as if his eyes land directly on Julián, as if he can see his outline, his breathing. His heart pounds so hard in his chest that he feels the entire cave can hear it. The stranger wipes the knife calmly, puts it away, smiles, and says in a clear voice, "Come out, boy. I do not like to work with people watching from the shadows." Julián knows he is finished. If he runs, the man will catch him in 2 steps. If he stays, it is the same. He decides to step out. His legs are shaking. His mouth is dry. The stranger looks at him the way you look at an interesting animal. Now, at this distance, Julián notices details he had not seen before. The eyes are not just pale. They are cold, empty, like someone who no longer sees people but raw material. The beard has dry stains that do not look like food. His hands are strong, but without the calluses of a farmer. These are the hands of someone who only cuts meat. "I saw you from the moment you left the village," the man says. "The curious ones do not live long. Did you know that?" Julián tries to speak, but his voice will not come. He only manages to whisper, "You are a Pishtaco." The man barely laughs. "That is what they say. You people have names for everything. Witch, demon, vampire. I just do a job. Your fat keeps machines running, cures diseases, lights up places far from here. You should not bother someone so useful." He takes a step toward him. The knife returns to his hand. It glints in the firelight. "Easy," he says. "It will not hurt as much as you think. You will just feel cold on the inside." Julián backs up. He feels the cave wall against his back. There is nowhere to go. He thinks of his mother, his father, the ravine, the bodies hanging like old meat, and he feels something stronger than fear, rage. He looks around for anything. Near his foot, he sees an iron bar that holds one of the hooks. Before the Pishtaco can touch him, Julián grabs the bar and swings it with everything he has. It connects with the man's face. The knife flies out of his hand. The man falls sideways, stunned, his eyebrows split open, blood running in a dark line. He's not dead, but for the first time he stops smiling. "I am going to hang you with the others," he growls, spitting blood. He throws himself at Julián. They roll across the ground. Julián feels hands like claws trying to close around his throat. He bites the man's wrist. He hits him at the face, drives his fingers into his eyes. The Pishtaco roars like a wounded animal. He shoves with brutal force. Julián is thrown against one of the hooks. The metal tears open his back, but does not impale him. He screams in pain. The Pishtaco gropes along the ground for the knife. He does not find it. Instead, his hand touches something else. A long bone, still stained with blood. He picks it up, raises his arm to bring it down on Julián's head. At that instant, something falls behind him. One of the hanging bodies, loosened by the struggle and the impacts on the structure, comes free of its hook and drops directly onto the Pishtaco. It throws him off balance and sends him to the ground. His head hits a rock, a dry crack, the sound of bone. The man lies still for a few seconds. It is unclear whether he is dead or only stunned. Julián does not wait to find out. He grabs the knife from the ground, and runs towards the exit, staggering, his back bleeding. He makes it out of the cave. The cold air hits his face like a slap. He runs up through the ravine without looking back. When he reaches the village at dawn, he collapses in the square. They find him soaked in blood that is not all his own. He wakes up surrounded by familiar faces. He tells them everything: the cave, the bodies, the pot, the stranger. The men arm themselves with whatever they have: sticks, machetes, tools. They go up as a group. There is anger, fear, and something else. Shame for not having listened to the elders sooner. They reach the ravine. The smell of burnt fat is still in the air. But when they enter the cave, the fire is out. The pot is overturned, and its contents spread across the floor. The hooks are empty. No bodies, only stains on the rock, marks of old blood, and scattered pieces of bone, as if someone had hurried to erase the evidence. Of the Pishtaco there is no sign. Some say that at the back of the tunnel they saw a silhouette fading away, limping, leaving a trail of blood. Others say it was imagination. The only certain thing is that from that day forward, nobody went down to the ravine alone again, and nobody let a stranger stay in the village without being watched. Time passed. Julián survived, but the scars on his back reminded him forever how close he came to ending up hanging like the others. The village began to do new things. Never travel alone. Always carry a small mirror in your pocket, because some say the Pishtaco cannot stand to see itself reflected. And teach the children from a very young age one simple lesson. In the highlands, the worst monster is not always a ghost. Sometimes it is a man with a knife and a hunger for your fat. Maybe you think this is an exaggeration, a legend from frightened people. But tell me something. When you walk alone on a dark road, when a car stops and offers you a ride, when a stranger smiles at you a little too long, do you not sometimes feel a strange chill right there in your back? They say it is nothing. They say it is paranoia. The elders of the Andes call it something else. They call it the Pishtaco.